So thank you everyone for tuning in for this. I'm really excited to welcome Linsey Pollak from Australia, who has done so many incredible things. Clarinetists probably are most familiar with the viral carrot clarinet, of which he is the creator. So I'll let Linsey take it away and just tell us a little bit about himself, how he got involved with music, anything that you want to share.
Okay, well, thanks, Jenny, and welcome everyone. Hi, hello from a little town called Mullaney in Australia, sort of on just a little bit off the northeast coast in Queensland. And it's a beautiful sunny winter day here, Sunday morning. And how did I get into music? Well, I guess like a lot of us and a lot of kids, I sort of started, well, here in Australia, as I'm assume does happen in the States and in Canada and a lot of places around the world. We have sort of a recorder program, so I think that was my first thing. I tutored on a recorder. When I was very little, I had got excited about making a simple one-stringed instrument with my dad, a sort of a nylon string box fishing line guitar. But I started learning classical piano, and then one day my mum said, I was about 11 years old then, and said, oh, there's an advertisement for a second-hand clarinet in the local paper for $20. Are you interested in playing? And I said, oh, yeah, why not? Give it a shot. And so for the next 10 years, I studied classical clarinet. But even though I loved it and sort of incorporated that into various bands that I played in at school and so on, I knew that I was sort of searching for something a little bit different. And if we sort of shoot forward to soon after I left school, I sort of discovered Renaissance and medieval music, and I, at the same time, discovered a grove of bamboo. And that grove of bamboo really was the beginning of a whole journey for me. I thought, I'm going to try making a flute out of some of this bamboo. So I did, and I instantly fell in love with the whole concept of making your own instrument. And so I got into bamboo flute making. At that time, I had started a science degree, and sort of a little bit into the second year of that science degree, thought I was going to become a neurophysiologist. I dropped out really to keep on making flutes, but learn more about the process of instrument making. So I studied wood turning. I managed to get a grant. I travelled around Europe working, measuring early instruments in museums, and set up a workshop in London. I became part of the early sort of music centre wind band during that time. So we're looking a fair way back. We're looking at the late 70s at this stage. And I had a workshop there for around about 2.5 years, making Renaissance flutes and a range of other instruments, but mainly Renaissance flutes. But it was also at that time that I had fallen in love with the Macedonian bagpipes or gaita. I heard an album in a friend's record collection and decided that one day I wanted to get to Macedonia and learn that instrument, which I did. And so during that 2.5 years that I was living in London, I also spent 8 months of that time living in Macedonia and learning to play the Macedonian bagpipes. I came back to Australia, once again set up my workshop making instruments, but this time it had changed so that I was now starting to invent my own instruments, but making a lot of bagpipe type instruments. And from there, it went on to a whole range of projects. And yes, somewhere along that route is the carrot clarinet. So that is just one of like many instruments. And I've got, if people have got specific questions or about the instruments I've sort of set up, so I have got a range of different instruments here that I can sort of demonstrate and play and give you an idea. But rather than sort of, I could spend the next hour and a half, I guess, telling my life story, but I think probably that might be a good point to stop and just sort of see, Jenny, if you've got sort of questions that lead on from that, or anyone else that's out there that want to take the discussion in a different direction.
So I'd like to start maybe with asking about some of your favorite instruments that you've made, or maybe the most challenging instruments to create, resources that you would recommend for anyone that wants to create their own instruments or just learn more about instrument making.
Okay. Well, it's a really big, wide open palette, this whole area of instrument making. And one of the great things that I've discovered is with the growth of YouTube and the internet, it's an area that has grown a lot. So when I was first getting into it, I really knew very, very few people and that were into, well, particularly experimenting with instrument designs and particularly wind instrument designs. But now there are a lot more, and there's some great, for example, Facebook groups in terms of DIY musical instruments. There's a lot of information. I mean, people can go to my YouTube channel. The easiest way to quickly get to it is just type in Clarinet. And even though there's a lot of videos now, because I've been sharing measurements and trying to encourage other people to get into it, so there's actually quite a lot of videos of people playing clarinets. But you'll find one of my videos, either the TED Talk one that sort of went viral, and also one of the first ones that I put up that went viral. Once you're on my channel, you'll see there's about 100 videos up there that show different types of wind instruments that I've created. And as well as making them, I guess I've built a bit of a name doing solo shows that feature live looping. So to create a whole range of layers of sound, but using only objects from around the house and garden, or instruments that I've invented. And some of those you'll see here. For example, this is a contrabass clarinet made out of garden hose or garden irrigation pipe, and just using plastic funnels, and then using inline taps to basically change how the length of the tube and how deep it's going to play. But I've got, as I mentioned, a range of those instruments here which I can demonstrate.
I think that would be great, and I just have to say I would much rather play your contrabass clarinet. It looks so much lighter than most contra clarinets. Before we get started with some
it's
of
very light.
Before we get started with some of the demonstrations, we had a question from Facebook. Do you still play the regular clarinet?
At the moment, I'm not. I stopped playing regular clarinet for a while. I got back into it when I went to Greece, because I'm particularly love the style of playing in Greece and in Turkey. And so I went to the north of Greece to a town called Serres, and was lucky enough to be able to learn from a clarinetist there called Stavros Vestekis. This is also getting back a little bit. And I still will have, over different periods of time, have played a sort of a Bohm system clarinet, sometimes an Albert system clarinet, which is what the Greek and Turkish styles of clarinet players use. But more often now I'm playing my own instruments. Most recently, the main one I'm playing is this one here, which I call a silly sax, not as in silly, S-I-L-L-Y, but as in cylindrical, so C-Y-L-I-S-A-X. And that's probably now the main instrument that I'm working on and developing. It's actually based on a new invention or discovery of the Yamaha laboratories, creating a virtual conical bore from a cylindrical bore. So if I take this side bore, actually I might just give you a very quick demo. So this is a branch tube, which by opening the bore up the top here, just under the mouthpiece, it's totally changing the physics of what's going on, rather than having an antinode at one end and a node at the other. We've got two antinodes, and so by opening that up, once again, all the even harmonics are in there. So rather than, let's plug it up, and we'll have what people recognize more as a clarinet type sound. But if I take it out now we'll hear the sound of the silly sax. Give it a little bit of reverb. And
That's incredible.
Let's plug it up again just to remind you. You'll hear that's wildly out of tune now once because the actual instrument has been set up to play with that open. And so I would have to be reconfiguring all the positions of the finger holes. But that's sort of mainly what I'm working on. So come back to the original question. I'm not playing it. I have a Bohm system clarinet here. I'm not using it for the moment, but at different times I do go back to it on various projects.
So 2 questions. One from me. Do you sell your clarinets or other instruments? If someone wanted to purchase one of these, are they available?
Yes, at various times that's all I've done. I've worked as an instrument maker. Not so much after for the last number of decades, but the main instrument at the moment that I am selling and do have for sale is this cylindrical sax, or the silly sax. Also, I've just started working on this instrument here, which is a chromatic hybrid duduk. So some of you might be aware of a really beautiful instrument from Armenia called a duduk, which has you'll mostly recognize it from sort of film tracks. It's used just because it's got such this haunting, beautiful, mellow sound in films like The Gladiator and so on. I think was when it first became famous. But this instrument here, which is I've made from an Australian timber called Gidgee, I've made the wall thickness very, very thick so that I can then incorporate cross fingering so that it works as a chromatic. It's only got a very limited range. The silly sax has got a 2-octave range. This has only got just over an octave. But this I'll just give you an idea of this. And strangely enough, that reed that you're seeing here, I've just made that with a bit of irrigation pipe beating it out with a hammer on an anvil. So you can sort of see it's sort of slightly flattened, and it's just the two sides of that polypipe vibrating together. And you can actually go, if you go to my YouTube channel, I go through the whole process of making the reed and the instrument. So that's one thing that you could definitely get into doing. Also on my website, there are different instrument measurements if you want to get into making your own.
So another question, it says, hello, Evan Christopher here in New Orleans. We met at Alex Cellier's a few years ago. You still have that oscillator. I hope I'm pronouncing all of this correctly.
The K-oscillator. Yeah.
Chaos, that makes more sense.
K-oscillator, yeah. That's a Korg. Well, originally it was a hardware little device with a screen, electronic sort of dance groove type instrument that you could sort of quickly loop up percussion and bass grooves. It was actually a very, very clever little instrument. That's now been created as an app. So both, I think, on Android as well as iOS, you can actually get that now just as an iOS app or an Android app. So that, again, that's just called K-oscillator, K-A-O-S-S-I-L-A-T-O-R, and that's a Korg product. And I haven't been using that sort of so much lately, but yeah, there've been a couple of projects which totally just used that as the sort of the looping system.
Awesome. So I'm really anxious to hear some of the demonstrations. If you want to show us some of the instruments that you have, I see you have quite the collection ready to play.
Okay. Well, let's say, seeing you're keen to be able to play a contrabass clarinet that doesn't weigh a ton, let's have a little listen to that. So, as I mentioned, why it is a contrabass clarinet is the actual length of the instrument goes right around from, I'm going to put a little bit later. I'm just going to use an alto sax mouthpiece, which is the mouthpiece that I use for a lot of the instruments. And so then that's bending right round, so it's actually the length of a contrabass clarinet. I'm going to sort of slightly affect the sound, so it's sort of going to have a pretty funky sound, and I'll bring that in a bit later. I'll also bring this instrument, which is, again, it's a silly sax, like the wooden one that I demonstrated, exactly the same principle, but again, you could make that for about $20. And not quite as nice a sound, but it still works. But we'll come back to that. We'll give it a little bit of a better sound with some reverb and so on. So what I'll do is I'll set up a bit of a groove using a balloon. Okay, you're hearing that at a reasonable level? So I'm just looping these bit by bit.
That was so great.
That was so amazing.
Thank you.
That's incredible. I don't even know where to begin with all of that. I'm just amazed that you can create something so cool out of simple household objects like a balloon. That was so cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I've always been excited and interesting about. So although I make instruments out of out of timber and am very interested in making beautifully crafted instruments, the thing I love about using the found objects is it just makes music accessible to so many more people, and it also I think makes music. Um, it's just as precious, but it doesn't seem so precious, if you get what I mean. It's not something that has to be left to the experts, and I think we need more and more to live in a world where, I guess, well, I'm talking about an Australian experience where the arts and music in particular was seen in the same way that sports are, that it's understood that there will be professionals and people who are great at what they do, but it's something that everybody does, because they just love doing it and they love doing it together. And although that does happen with music, it's not encouraged in quite the same way. There's so many stories that hundreds and hundreds of stories of kids that have been told to mime down the back when they were in kindergarten because they didn't sing in tune. And there's this idea that you either might be tone deaf, or that you're born a musician or not born a musician, which is so absolutely ridiculous. Whereas with sport, if you've got a young kid and you go out and you're playing ball, you don't expect that that kid is going to be able to throw that ball 50 yards in the first go, or catch that ball. You just, every weekend you go out and you throw ball and you have fun with it. And when you think about, say, compare that to singing, and how often a lot of kids are told, well, no, you don't have it, you're tone deaf, or you can't sing in tune, just go down and mime down the back. When you think about the complexity of all the muscle involvement in the vocal cords that are going on to sing in tune, it's just as complex, if not more complex, than all of the muscle coordination that's involved in throwing or catching a ball. And so for me, making instruments out of found objects also makes that sort of something that people maybe feel that's something that I could do, and also it makes it fun, and it brings humour into it, and you can have a laugh, but at the same time, I just love that first look that people get when they hear the clarinet, and they're expecting it to make some funny squeaky sounds, and then they go, oh, that's actually a really cool sound. And yeah, so that's for me, that's the exciting thing about this sort of journey of instruments from found objects.
I think that's really inspiring, especially throughout the last several months. I know that everyone has faced their own difficulties, and I think it's maybe interesting that people are probably getting a little bit more crafty at home when they stay indoors and at home, and maybe they see your videos and find a carrot in the fridge and then they try to make it. Have you noticed maybe a rise in popularity with your YouTube videos, or people emailing you and asking you questions the last few months?
Yeah, there has been. I mean, it's been there all the time. There's always people doing that. But yeah, definitely there seem to be a lot more people out there sort of trying things and having a go with things, just generally. And it's interesting. I mean, I hear it's a little bit different in America, but in Australia, just the actual playing of music has just grown. Like, music stores here have sold out of so many products. I was just talking to a salesperson in a big music store just last week, and he said, "Yeah, no, we so many of our lines we just actually can't get. There's a shipping container coming into Australia, which the whole shipping container has been pre-sold, and that was that's trying to be distributed around the whole of Australia. So it's definitely people are having it is a time where sort of creative pursuits and creativity, I think, has been on the rise, which is fantastic to see.
That's really interesting. I don't know if it's like that for music stores here in the States. I know actually last month I was looking to buy a theremin and they were sold out everywhere I contacted. So I'm still waiting on that
Okay.
delivery. But
Yep.
moving on to the carrot clarinet, I'm really interested to know what the inspiration behind that was. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the carrot clarinet and then maybe explain some other types of clarinets that you've created? I've seen a few already, but if there's any others you'd like to share.
Sure. Well, that's quite a simple story. I was already doing my solo shows where I'd been making watering can clarinets and flutes from brooms and ladders and various objects. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, I'm putting on a concert in a couple of months' time, and I'd love you to come and do something with a found object, but I want you to do something new that no one's seen before." And so I sort of put my thinking cap on, didn't come up with anything. And then one morning I just woke up and I went, "Oh, well, a carrot is the right shape. It's not a tube, but I can easily make it a tube." And so I bought it out, and just from the work that I'd done with instruments, I sort of knew, that I wanted to use something around about, a 12, 12.5, 13 or 14 millimeter. So we're looking, half inch in your language, or 5/8 inch. So I used a half inch drill bit and drilled it out. First of all, I made a flute, an end blown flute, and yep, that worked first go, and I thought great. And then from there it went on. I tried using clarinet and eventually an alto sax mouthpiece, which I just preferred the tone, even though it's a clarinet for just the wider or more open chamber was better for that sound. So so that's an instrument that happened very simply just from a challenge from a friend of mine. And I won't make one here, but I I made one about a month and a half ago that has been in the bottom drawer of the fridge, and it still works. So if you put them in a plastic bag and put them in the fridge, they can sort of survive for about 2 or 3 months. So this is sort of towards the end of its life. So here it is, for those that haven't seen it, the carrot clarinet. Very simple. It's just a half-inch bore down the centre, drilled out. The funnel is partly for looks, but also it means that I can extend the bore. I don't have to. One of the difficulties is finding big enough carrots and long enough carrots, and so this just extends it a little bit. So I don't, for the bottom note, I don't have to have quite as long a carrot. And then I've just got an alto sax mouthpiece, which has got a little tube as an attachment that fits into the clarinet, and here's how it sounds. So it's shrunk a little bit over time. It's they do shrink a little bit. So it's playing a little bit sharp at the moment, and the bottom note's playing a little bit sharp.
So do you eat the carrot clarinets after you're finished with them?
I usually do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are
And
there other? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go on.
I was just going to ask, what other vegetables make good clarinets if you were to make a clarinet out of a vegetable?
Well, you could use parsnips. Basically, you need. I mean, I guess it's a fairly obvious in the sense that you need a nice, firm, solid, airtight tube, and the right size. So I have used a daikon, a big, Japanese radish, but something like a cucumber, that's tricky because it's all sort of soft and squishy around the seeds on the inside. But yeah, parsnips and carrots and a daikon, they'd be the ones to choose.
Okay, and if anyone's watching this, Jessica just asked if anyone has made a carrot clarinet. Please let us know in the comments. I'm curious. I've seen your videos so many times, and I've always told myself I would make a carrot, and then I thought it's not very difficult. Just for whatever reason, I haven't made one.
Yeah, so if you've seen the videos of me playing it, there's also just type in "make your own carrot clarinet" because there's actually a video that I've done. I should do an update because it's quite an old one, but it's still it works. So, but that's got all of the measurements and how to do, step-by-step process of how to do it for anyone who wants to try. Yeah, and I don't know whether you heard about the Netherlands Clarinet Festival and that project that they invited me across to do. But for those of you who hadn't heard about that, goodness, when was that? It was probably around 2016 or something like that. I'm not sure. But I was invited by the Netherlands Clarinet Festival to come over and help coordinate a project to go for the Guinness Book of Records, the greatest number of people making and playing a clarinet. And the challenge was to actually do the whole thing in 1 hour. So they had all the carrots ready, all the bits and pieces ready, mouthpieces and so on. And then we used 1 hour, and it was very, very impressive. And we got 275 people making carrot clarinets. And then I had composed a very, very simple piece, which had to also involve kids who had never, ever played an instrument before. So it was great. We had a 275-piece clarinet orchestra, which included some of Europe's top clarinet players and probably about 100 kids who had never played a reed instrument in their lives. And it was chaos, but it was wonderful chaos. I've never seen so many smiles in one place.
That's amazing.
I was just going to say, many people that were at Clarinet Fest in Knoxville will probably remember what chaos looks like. Because we set the world record for the world's largest clarinet choir in Knoxville. And it was quite the event and quite chaotic. So we completely understand that.
Yeah,
not carrot clarinets. Maybe we should talk. Maybe it's time to compete with that world record and make an even larger carrot clarinet ensemble, or perhaps contra clarinet or something new like that. Maybe, I don't know, daikon clarinet, but we should talk.
If you have a carrot farm, please reach out to us.
I never thought we would be saying those words, but if anyone has any ideas, we should talk about this. I like this idea. Yeah, so you actually read my mind. I wanted to hear more about that carrot clarinet ensemble. I think I saw a post about that when it happened on Facebook, and I thought, is this, a joke? Is this real, or is this some kind of prank? But I heard the video. There is a video on YouTube where you can watch part of the cacophony, and it's actually, it sounds really good. It's brilliant. I loved it.
Well, I don't know about really good, but it sounds great, yeah.
It sounds much better than I would expect that many carrot clarinets, especially I had no idea so many were beginners that had never played clarinet before. That's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, most of them had certainly never played a reed instrument before, and I think a lot of them had never played an instrument before. And so they had just had really a one note, an open, totally no fingers, open note rhythmic. So I wrote a piece in 4 parts, and then I had to make at least, give the more advanced players something a little bit more interesting to play. It was funny, actually, because I sort of sent them, I did a little recording of the piece just to send with the score being about an 8-bar pattern, which we're looking at. So it's like an ostinato, it's 4 different ostinato patterns. But I sent them a recording and I said, however, I'm also going to send you a recording of how it probably will sound. So then I recorded the actual piece of music, but playing like wildly out of tune as I sort of expected it would be. And it was actually it was very close to the final product. But yeah, the video is a really fun watch because you can just see everyone just sort of concentrating and just having this great time. And I mean, I was conducting it and I thought, oh, is this going to be filmed? And I thought, oh, I don't know. I better So I just got them going and then grabbed my iPad and quickly ran around. So that actually clip was just off my iPad once I'd got the whole thing going. But yeah, that was a great project, and hats off to the team there who really not just had the conceived the idea, but actually made the whole process really smooth and a lot of fun.
That's so incredible. I'm still just in such awe that that happened, and you can hear it on YouTube. I think Jessica linked the video as well as some of the others we've been referencing. I have a question from Facebook. Is there a way to make a register change with the carrot, like on recorder?
No, there's not. So a lot of the simple instruments, I mean, I just go, okay, the limitation is that I'll have a range of a ninth if I've got the 7 finger holes and the thumb hole. So, and you sort of just you get used to it. So that there's no. I mean, I'm sure in the future that some clever person will work out some sort of register key. The thing is with the clarinet, it's so short anyway, it would be very, very difficult, even in a really beautifully crafted instrument, to get that register key working so well in a bore that was so short. It can be done, of course, but that would be a bit tricky.
So let's see, I forget my next question. I remember. So what do people say? What is their normal reaction if they maybe aren't involved in music and you try to explain what you do? What have been some of the more memorable reactions that you've seen?
I think one of my favorite reactions is a Japanese tourist who was, this was another show that I did with 2 other wind players, and it was called The Psychologists. I don't know whether you've seen any clips of that. So CYCOLOGIST, like as in bicycle. So we were cyclists, and we would be cycling around and maybe stop outside a coffee shop, get off our bikes, and then play a clarinet trio on the bicycle seat stem. And one of the comments that we got for that is one of my favorite. It was a Japanese tourist, and he looked at us and afterwards and he said, confusing, but somehow cool. I really like that comment. But there's a lot. I mean, I sort of collect some of my favorite YouTube comments. There's a lot of great comments that over the years that I've got. I mean, I've got so many videos up, but there's some fantastic ones.
I'm sure those have to be wild, some of them. I think I've read some of them before, and some of them made me laugh, and I'm sure you've seen it all with the comment section.
Yeah.
I'm just looking to see if I missed any more questions, but maybe if you wanted to show us any more demonstrations, I want to hear some more of the playing.
Okay, well, let's look at something just really, really simple. One of my favorite materials is just ordinary old garden hose. So in this bit of garden hose, I've actually built 2 instruments, a sort of more a bass clarinet and a little tiny soprano clarinet. So I've got 2 sets of finger holes that I've drilled into this section, and then this half of the clarinet, or 2/3 of the clarinet, is another set of finger holes. So let's do that. So I'll again just set up just a little groove for me to play over very, very simply.
That was so cool.
And the beauty, I love that just because of the simplicity. It's just this one piece of hose, and it's yeah, and it gets such a great sound.
Mm-hmm. It has so many different kinds of sounds too. It's amazing that you could take something so simple and make not only one instrument but two out of the same
That's right.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, basically, it is just like two instruments, and I could cut it off in the middle, and so people who are wondering how both instruments are in the same tube. Basically, instead of having an end, I'm having a hole in the side of the pipe that is functionally the end of one of the instruments, and then another hole that's functionally the end of the other. So there's a bit of tube in between, which is really just a connector.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really nice having both of the instruments in the one piece.
And I see we have a question. Do you research about ancestral clarinets around the world or like world musics? How do you find out about the different styles and genres?
Yeah, that's something that's been of huge interest to me. It's another whole area of my musical life. I, in fact, started Australia's sort of first sort of major multicultural music centre over 30 years ago now, over in Perth. And my interest really started, as I mentioned earlier on, with Macedonian music. I mean, I discovered the Macedonian music in a friend's record collection, and I just fell in love with it. And then that interest then opened my eyes, particularly when I got back to Australia, of the incredible wealth of diverse music that we have in Australia because of our immigrant population. And at that time, this is in late 70s, early 80s, that music was really marginalised and not given the access to a mainstream general public that it should. And so that was the reason for starting up what became a centre called Culture, but it was the Multicultural Music Centre of West Australia. And that also at around that time was just the beginning of my journey of just researching and looking at different types of music, but particularly the style of music that I have really followed has been that area of Eastern European music, but particularly Macedonian music. And I've done a lot of different projects during my time living, the 8 months that I lived in Macedonia. I was just given incredible hospitality by a Romani or Gypsy family in the town of Berovo, in just near the Bulgarian border. And they were so generous. Also, my bagpipe teacher in Skopje, Lazo Nikolovsky, who, that's an interesting story because I was actually looking for somewhere to live, and I was travelling with a friend who played the kaval, or the Macedonian traditional folk flute, and we were looking for somewhere to stay, and found Lazo, who had a granny flat in his backyard. But I ended up living there for 3.5 months, and he spent pretty much an average of 3 hours a day just playing music, and which I'd record and learn. And it was just the ultimate really learning experience for a young 23, 24-year-old who had just stopped learning clarinet. I actually had to unlearn a lot of the classical training just really to get my head into a very, very different way of playing. And so in that case, in answer to your question, that was, I guess, very intensive research, but I never thought of it as research at the time. It was just really, I was just absolutely fascinated and in love with this music, which I wanted to play. And I've kept playing it continuously since then, but with different projects. Right now, we've actually got a small Macedonian folk band here in Mullaney, but until about 1.5 years ago, I was running a 24-piece Macedonian or Rom or Gypsy-inspired band. They've got a style of music using brass and percussion, and so I'd written a whole lot of music in that genre. And so that was a group called the Unusual Suspects, which played that style of music. And then we've still got a current group called the Balkanics, which is, again, using original Macedonian material, but also my own compositions, and using, I guess, a very sort of funk, Eastern European funk style. So, yeah, that's the direction that I've taken it over the years.
And I think that's a nice transition to another question is, do you have any compositions available or commissions for these different instruments?
Yeah, I don't. I tend not to sort of publish sheet music, I guess. I've got, dozens and dozens and dozens of compositions, but because it tends to be for my own projects, it's not sort of something that I've sort of put online or for sale. Having said that, all of the music that I wrote, it was mostly 5-part wind, mostly brass for range of instruments, but particularly trumpet, sax, clarinet, tuba, trombone, those instruments. So there's a whole, probably a repertoire of about 40 pieces, I guess, that I've written or arranged for that Macedonian gypsy style of playing.
And I'm interested to know if you have any advice for classically trained clarinetists trying to explore other styles of music. I know that I was classically trained, and in the last few years, I've been very interested in learning about the musical styles of different cultures, of different countries. So if there's any advice you have for anyone trying to make that switch.
I mean, I think for me, it was really just following my heart, or following if you really love something, nowadays we have so much opportunity with YouTube in terms of being able to, draw on this wonderful, diverse musical culture that we have around the world. And I think I mean, in some ways, I'm glad I didn't have it, because it meant that I had to travel to Macedonia to find it, and that was a very, very, very rich experience, which totally changed my life. There's no doubt about that. And I don't know whether that would have happened in the same way if I was sort of sitting at home with headphones on and getting into it with my clarinet off YouTube. But but having just said that, I know it is possible, because now the quality of music being produced by young musicians who may be conservatorium trained or classically trained, and who have found their way into that music but not necessarily travelled over there, and the quality is very, very high. And I guess the important thing is to be true to and respectful of the culture whose roots that you've fallen in love with, and then because we've got to remember we're visitors to those cultures. And I found nothing but warmth and encouragement from Macedonians and Macedonian musicians, because they were delighted that there was a non-Macedonian musician playing. But I was always totally respectful of the tradition and the culture that came from. And although as a musician I tend to be somebody who experiments and tries different things, I do it with a strong foot in that traditional what I learned, and that affected me, so that even when I'm writing music, a lot of the music that I write, when I'm not even trying to write a Macedonian piece, I cannot be not affected by that time that I spent in Macedonia, because it was probably the most influential period of time on my musicianship in a way. Even though I had before that studied classical clarinet, that time in my 20s when I was living over there and then getting into that music, that really affected myself as a musician greatly. And so I guess my advice is, just follow. If you fall in love with the type of music, just be in love, and but be very aware that you're part of a tradition, even if you're trying new ideas and new things with that. You're part of a tradition, and we owe a great debt to that tradition. So for example, when I reconnected with the Romani family that I had lived with on different occasions back in the late 70s, and there was a huge gap, and in 2013 we reconnected, and I went back there, and it was such an amazing reconnection. And so I took all of my crazy instruments over to do a solo show for that big extended family, in a way as a thank you. This is, my influence was from here, from you people, and from your parents and from your grandparents, and they loved it. I mean, they could. It wasn't even so much seeing the connection, though I played a lot of pieces that were working in Macedonian rhythms and Macedonian scales, and a lot of the instruments that I build, I'll use tunings from that part of the world. But yeah, I think it's all I can say is, go for it and have fun and follow your passion with it. And there's certain things that, as a classical musician, you sometimes have to sort of put aside and unlearn, but that doesn't mean that you unlearn them to the extent that you can't then sort of bring them back when you're playing other music. It's just it just sometimes makes it a little bit trickier when you're having to sort of learn a style or a way of tonguing or breathing or blowing that you would have been smacked on the wrists when you were a young clarinet student.
And I think that's so true. There are so many things that are very much at home in one style of playing, but you do have to unlearn a great bit to experiment with other styles of music.
That's right, yeah.
Let's see. I think to close this, if you have any other demonstrations you'd like to give or anything you'd like to perform, any instruments you would like to share, and we'll see if we have any final questions. But and maybe for this, I think Jessica and I are going to close our cameras. That way all the attention is on you and not looking at us. I'm bobbing along and smiling like a child. So if you want to demonstrate that, I'll close my camera.
Okay, well, I might finish off then. I'll I'll bring in Mr. Curly because Mr. Curly is sort of a bit of a YouTube favourite also. Maybe not quite as viral as the carrot, but pretty viral. It's also an instrument I love, and it's been around. Again, this is a virtually contrabass sound. I'm affecting a little bit. I'm not adding any octaving on it, so it's actually that'd be probably interesting to show you. I'll play it without. So actually, people might also be asking about the microphone or wondering about that. I use this is just a piezo pickup. It's actually made by an Australian maker here in Brisbane. And if people are after one of these microphones that can fit either into the actual mouthpiece or just into you can actually get a spare tuning barrel and put it into the tuning barrel for clarinets. And so it's piezo barrel, PIEZOBARREL, and it's piezobarrel.com is the link. And they're really great microphones or pickups, and very, very reasonably priced compared to what's on the market. So let's listen to, I won't turn that on, I'll just play it through the microphone, which won't do a great job of picking up the sound because it's so low, but it will give you an idea what it sounds like acoustically. So now what I'm going to do is I'll turn the piezo barrel pickup on, and let's have a listen to that, but really all you'll hear is a bit of reverb with it. And now I'll put on Mr. Curly's own personal effect. Okay, so let's now have a listen to this piece. You'll see another instrument also joining Mr. Curly. So let's have a listen to Mr. Curly. Thank you.
That was incredible. I think what I love most about everything that you do is it just puts a smile to my face, and I'm sure everyone watching this. It's just very, very pure and beautiful, and it's, I think, music at its finest. It's amazing. What you do is really incredible, and I really want to thank you for sharing it with everyone.
My pleasure. Well, it always is. I think it's probably even more fun for me than you guys.
I don't know. I'm having a lot of fun. I was sort of smiling. You couldn't see because the camera was off, but I was smiling, like a happy idiot. Like, this is so cool and groovy, and it's probably good the camera wasn't on so people won't laugh at me. But
Yep. Anyway, keep tuned. I think in the future months there will be some sort of project which does involve clarinet players, clarinet teachers, and making instruments. But that's, at the moment, it's a little bit of a secret in that it's still being devised. So I won't say any more on that. But just, keep tuned.
Okay, everyone, you heard it here. Please keep your ears open for what's about to happen. That makes me really intrigued.
Once we hear, we'll share. We'll
yes,
let you know.
Yes.
Great.
Once the secret gets out.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to share my love and my passion for this music, and hope that some of you out there are inspired to have a go yourselves, and also very happy for people to make contact with me, maybe through the association or whatever's the easiest way, if people have got specific questions that they'd like to ask.
Yeah, that would be great. For now, we can talk after this, Linsey, and see if you feel comfortable sharing anything besides your website and all. But for now, if anyone wants to get in touch with him, please email me at assistant@clarinet.org. I'll type in my email to the chat. If anyone has any questions for Linsey, send them to me, and then we'll communicate and figure out a way for everyone to ask all of your burning questions.
Well, a very simple way. You can go to the website, and there is a contact link on all the pages, on main pages on the website. So that's just so Jessica, I think, has put up that link, or we'll put up that link.
Jessica's the fastest. So, before I finish saying anything, usually it's in the chat. So.
Fantastic. Yeah.
There it is.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah.
That's much easier. So if anyone has any questions, use the contact form on Linsey's website. It's in the chat below, and we'll link this on Facebook and social media for anyone that misses this. I think that's everything. So Linsey, I really want to thank you so much for sharing your music, your art, your love, your passion, everything that you do. Thank you for sharing it with us, and I hope you have a really wonderful day.
Thank you. The same to you. Thanks.